See your faces. Anybody a little extra sore from ShareFest yesterday, scooping mulch? Anybody have a nightmare about mulch? Yeah, Will just bossed people around, so whatever. I'm just kidding. He did a good job. So did Britton. Yeah, they feel good. They feel fine. If you've noticed, there's plenty of blue folders on your tables. If you look hard enough, Amy put a $100 bill in one of them. Okay.
We just needed it for you to take notice of the folder.
Yeah, so with this series, we're going to set you up for organizational success. So you will have that folder to take home with you. And if you are a forgetful person like me and probably wouldn't bring it back next week, you can also store it back there this week. And we promise we won't look through it. Yeah, we'll guarantee that.
And there's Sharpies if they want to write their name on their folder.
Yeah, you can do that. Or you can put your sticker like Abby did. Anyways, so last week, Amy kicked off what we're going to be going through for the next, now 5 weeks of really talking through how has God, pun intended, shaped us, created us, formed us, wired us, all the above, really for the purpose of not just being someone who consumes, but really being a contributor to the body of Christ, that through the way that God has gifted us, we may have an understanding, but that we can also really just be for each other, for the body of Christ, for the church as a whole. And so this week, we're actually going to we're going to go in reverse. So we're not going to start with spiritual gifts. We're going to do that at the end after we have been through all the other letters, and we're going to start with E. So we're going to go epos instead of shape. Epos. So we're going to start with experiences. And so really what we're working through today, I'm going to be more up here just facilitating this time. So a lot of this time is going to be you guys thinking through your story, thinking through different experiences, really from birth to where you are now. And so what we're going to have an understanding of is how has God used those parts of our story and our experience to form us into who we are today. How is he continuing to form us? So this might be a level of discovery for you guys as we work through this. Some of you guys are probably have already spent some time working through material that's similar to this, and so you might have a pretty sharp understanding of your story and how that has impacted you currently, how God has used that. So whether it's more of repetition and review, or if this is more of discovery for you guys, I think it'll be fun to see the outcome of this at the end of these next several weeks as we work through shape. So the main thing with the experiences that we're going to kind of focus on, the main verse is one that you're probably not shocked by, but it comes from Romans chapter 8, verses 28 through 29. So I just want to read this. I'll explain a little bit about experiences and where we're going. And then I'll pray, and then it'll just be a lot of table time working through your story as a whole. So Romans 8:28, which highlights for us that God is present really through no matter what we've gone through, says this. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. And a lot of times we drop off from here and we don't include verse 29. But verse 29 says, for those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed into the image of his Son, in order that we might be the firstborn among many brothers. Okay, so that's just kind of a guiding verse for us as we look at experiences. And experiences, as it says on the slide, are those parts that are both good and painful that God intends to use. And that's the beauty of the gospel, of us knowing our Creator, of us having a relationship with Jesus, is that he can make sense of those experiences that we have gone through. Apart from him, sometimes we don't have, we wouldn't be able to locate why certain events or things have happened in our life. And so just a quick thing that I want to kind of walk through, and then we'll hop into the time that we'll be thinking through our stories. Why do our experiences matter? Well, one, we know that God is over all, right? There's plenty of verses that we can work through. Romans 8:28 highlights that as well, but Ephesians 1 talks about how Christ is over everything, and so we know that God is over all of our stories. So if we think about what has happened in the past, we can look back and hopefully see God's faithfulness through every stage, every part of our life. And as we get older and as we work through our experiences, sometimes we have more understanding than we did like 2 years ago of what was going on. Like we have a clearer lens to be able to look through our past and our story and our experiences. And so we can see God's faithfulness as we look into our past, but we also have confidence as we move forward, right? That there's great purpose. So Ephesians 1:10 says that he has prepared good works for us in advance that we should walk in them, right? That's the hope that we have, that we can have confidence, we can trust every part of our life to God because we know that he has a set plan for us and good works that we should be, that we can walk in them. And then just another thing to keep in mind is that as we think through our story, our experiences are not separate from the formative work of God in our life. So even though maybe at one point we just saw it as kind of its own type of experience, it's like God had his hand in that to form you in some way. And we might not have great clarity in that, but that's okay. But really, as we even consider after we get through all the material today in each of the different sections we worked through, something cool to see through that is that some of our experiences can be a catalyst, as we'll see, for what we're passionate about or the ministry that we want to be involved in or how we feel like God is specifically using this. And then some of you might be familiar with 1 Corinthians chapter 1, which talks about how our experiences can be a comfort to those around us, that the afflictions that we have gone through, we know that we have received God's faithfulness, we've received his comfort, and now we can be able to comfort others through our experiences. And so a big temptation as we work through our stories and as we have time to kind of share some of those things that we have gone through, whether it's positive or negative, there's a couple things that might happen, right? Like sometimes we want to compare one person's experience to the other, right? And that's not the intended goal. We don't want to compare, we don't want to compete. Really what we want to look at it is have the perspective that each of us we each have a very unique story so that as a body of Christ, God can use us to complete each other, right? That we can push each other towards the sanctifying work of God in our life. And so just have that perspective is like, hey, this is your story of which God is working through you. And so there's the temptation to want to compare or to want to compete or say, hey, my story is invalid because you have experienced this. And that's not necessarily true, right? Or we want to magnify our stories above others. So just try to keep a middle line and just some perspective there as we work through our experiences. And also know that sometimes this is kind of a fearful thing for people because sometimes we don't want to look back at what we've experienced, or it might be hard to deal with. I mean, Amy was pretty vulnerable last week in just sharing some of the things that she's worked through. Sometimes there's things in just even my story that I don't want to admit. And so we're not saying that you have to dump that all on yourself today, but begin to look at that process and be honest of what have I truly gone through? How is God working this? How is he redeeming this? How is he going to use this moving forward? So that's that. And just here, the goal of SHAPE, the goal of this time, again, just want to reiterate, is that we want to contribute. We want to see we want to discover how God has specifically wired and gifted us for his purpose, so that we can live in the fullness of who he has created us to be and not be unaware or not just sit on the sideline, but to continue to use everything that God has given to us. So in your folders, the handouts that you guys have, we have broken it down into 6 different categories. And then within each category, there are age stages that you're going to work through. So 0 to 6, 7 to 12, 13, is it 13 to 18? 19 to 24, and then 25 plus. So as we go through each of these categories, just think through what experience did I have through that age stage, and then just write it down, be open with it, work through it. And if you're not 25 yet, just leave that one blank or use it for extra space if you want to keep going. So that's kind of going to be the process. So with the first part we're going to have, so the creative little colorful boxes, those are going to be the category titles, and so you can write that there if you want. So the first one we're going to work through is going to be key people and relationships in your life. So was it a mother, was it a father, grandparent, friend? Who was it? Maybe even jot down just a little bit of why, but really focus in here, and we're going to spend the next 5 minutes, and I'm going to set a timer, and we're going to spend 5 minutes on each category. Now, give me a little feedback after the first time. If that is way too quick, we'll figure out an adjustment because we have an hour. And Zach taught me a little something about technology, so I might be able to change it back there. And we could go to 6 minutes or 7 minutes. But for now, we're just going to start at 5 minutes. If that's way too fast, just let me know. We can figure out a plan. And we'll have good music going on in the background. So we're going to work through there's going to be 6 different categories we'll work through just in this environment. And then halfway through, I'll have some table discussion questions that you guys can just kind of begin to share in what you're processing. So also note, don't feel like you have to share everything, and you can just share parts. But hear from other people, their stories, what they're thinking through and processing, and that might spark something in your story that you want to just think more about or even write down. So this first part is going to be key people and relationships through each of those stages. So,
When did we meet?
boom, there's your timer. You're on the countdown. Yeah, here. So we'll go through 3 of these, and then we'll have some table discussion. So, don't be afraid of the awkward silence and really getting into this. And if obviously sometimes a public environment is a little bit hard for some of us to enter that space, but if you want to take more time after this, that's great too. So however you guys work and process is awesome. All right, so the second one we're going to work through is joy. So really what we're thinking through in this, why is my clicker not working? Whoa, no. Okay, joy. Amy, can you click that one? Okay, awesome. So joy, what are some of those memories that you have that have been formative in your life, defining, that bring joy? And so that might be memories you hang on to with like relationships or experiences. And there's a book that we recently went through that kind of engages the left side of our brain, right? Like, so you have, well, I don't remember what side of the brain it was, but it talks about as a holistic disciple that sometimes we're just rooted in the, like, kind of in the truth side of things. So we hammer home truth. We also don't remember, or we don't think through that part of being formed as a disciple is just also thinking through those experiences, right? Like what have been those joys that, or even pains, as we'll go through in a little bit, that have been formative in our life. And so a joy is a memory that makes you feel grateful. Anything in life. Maybe it's a memory that makes you feel grateful and connected to God. You picture faces or specific instances, but what's a joy? And so also something that's important here to kind of remember and go through is that joy is not the absence of pain. Maybe you did experience a pain in your past, but there was a joy within that pain. So also keep that in mind as you kind of work through what are some instances in your life or experiences that you had that have brought you joy. So we're just kind of trying to get you guys to think a little bit different and creatively through your story, through your experiences. So take 5 minutes to do that as well. Think through joy, and then we'll move on to the next one. All right, awesome. Okay, for this next one, we're going to be looking at those points in our life that brought about pain. And so obviously not knowing your guys' stories fully, I know that this can be a tough point for a lot of people, or even sometimes hard to identify and just even to acknowledge. And so pain is a loss, suffering, maybe it's lack of understanding. Maybe it was one event or a point in your story. Maybe it's carried on and carried with you, for quite a while. And so it could be a physical, emotional, or a spiritual pain of sorts. And one of my story that comes up that's been really formative in my life was just the loss of my best friend in high school. That was kind of where the Lord grabbed my heart and my attention for him, even through the loss of someone super close to me. And so definitely a point of mourning and pain in my life. And so I'm sure you guys have had variations of that where God has maybe hopefully worked through the pain, or maybe there's still a lot of understanding that needs to be worked through. And so this is not going to be a counseling session for that, but like even just to begin to walk through that and identify that might be good and helpful going forward. And so even if you're continue to be confused about those points of pain, our life care team is great. We have a ton of resources that we can point you guys towards, and counseling is not something to be ashamed of in that. So that's kind of just a side thing as well. But yeah, so take some time to work through and maybe just name those, or if you don't feel comfortable writing that down, that's great. But yeah, spend some time, spend 5 minutes kind of thinking through what were some of those points of pain in our life. And then after that, we'll spend some time working through some table questions. You don't have to. That wasn't part of it. All right. This is just table discussion questions. Feel free to talk about other things that come to mind. But yeah, as you guys have gone through those first 3 categories, what are some commonalities? Maybe what are some different things that you guys have gone to? What surprised you? Who are some of the people that have had the greatest impact on you? I feel like that's a fun thing to talk through, like, because you get to hear how other people have spoken into your life or been a part of just some of the experiences that have really shaped you. So you don't have to share pain. You don't have to share joy. Those are just options and things to work through. You don't have to go through every single question, but just kind of just have a conversation with people at your table. I know that we don't all know each other super well, so there's levels of trust. That's okay, but feel free to share what you would want. So go for it. I don't have a timer on this one, so whenever it gets... Hey, all right, cool. You have freedom in this one. Free to be as creative as you want to be. All right.
Well, yeah, you're coming in as class. It's not just class.
All right. Any fun insights from your guys' tables? Any themes or people or that anybody shared? Or you don't have to share someone else's. You can share your own. That probably wouldn't be right to do. You can share your own, but.
I think some like generalities. Our table kind of were like, oh, our parents had like a cutoff age somewhere within our stories, so we're like, oh, we didn't realize the influence kind of could have dwindled.
Yeah,
a bit.
changed. Yeah, that's a good observation. Anything else?
Well, we talked about how like a lot of our joy and pain was like the same, like throughout. Like we wrote the same on both.
Yeah.
In different situations.
It's cool. Did you have something, Kendra?
That was pretty much it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else before we move on? All right, so the next one, it might be similar. Maybe there's overlap, that's okay. But your achievement. And so maybe it's specific points of accomplishment. And I'm not just thinking trophies here, right? Like maybe it was a trophy. Maybe you won a race, and that was very impactful in your life, and that's great. But and so maybe it's opportunities like that. Maybe it's something else. So or points of affirmation where someone came and spoke just spoke encouragement into your life that opened the door for an opportunity. And so maybe it's specific accomplishments, but also an affirmation or an encouragement from someone, fulfilling moments. So spend some time just thinking through different achievements in your life or something that has brought you joy that is kind of, well, not joy, but has propelled you forward through that experience. Kind of cool. All right, for this next one, we're looking at challenges. And so with the challenge, maybe there's no immediate resolution. Often out of these challenges, this is where, our convictions or our beliefs were formed or forged through this time. And so, take some time again to think through that. So the last one we're going to be working through might be the most important, is going to be our relationship with Christ, weaving that into our story. And so with this one, just consider the state of your relationship through each age stage. And so who are you? What were you like before Christ? Was there a relationship with Christ? What was it like, or what was your receptivity towards the things of God? When did you accept Christ? And then obviously, what has life with Christ been like since that? So that might be hard to sum up, obviously, but I mean, there's a few key words or You could use arrows for direction. Maybe it was trending upwards. Maybe it was slightly, I don't know. I'm just trying to get creative here for y'all. But yeah, think through your relationship with Christ through each of those age or stages. All right, so the last component of this is really going to kind of just for those of you who want to visualize maybe your story and the ups and downs of it, just spend a minute or two. There's a horizontal or vertical line on your sheet. You can turn that sideways and just plot out some of the turning points in your life. And so turning points towards your hopes, which would have been encouragements, away from your hopes, disappointments, just to kind of locate the journey of your story, of your experiences. And so take a quick minute to do that if you'd like. And then we'll finish up with just some table discussion to kind of see what and discover together maybe what God showed us or themes that we've recognized in our story. Actually, that's probably self-explanatory. We don't have much time yet left, so let's just move on to the table questions. So if that works, I'll let you guys do that later. Sorry to throw you off, curveball. All right, so at your table, I think this is the fun part. Obviously, we don't have to divulge everything, but it's fun to see kind of trends and patterns in our stories or some similarities between our stories with each other at our table. So don't have to go through all these questions, but just engage each other a little bit on what stood out to you and answer some of those questions. So take 5 minutes or so and do that as well. And then I'll come back up, we'll pray, and we'll be done. So. All right, we got just a few minutes left. Hopefully that was a beneficial time to walk through. And also just to hear from those around your table. Does anybody want to share just any cool insights they had or even themes as we walk through or what you see God doing in and through your story, just as a quick encouragement to the group? Anybody have anything?
I just shared that there are a lot of things that happened early in my story that I thought were absolutely equal and horrible, and now I wouldn't be able to do certain parts of my job or be able to pour into different people's lives who say, I actually do understand that if I hadn't gone through this. And that allows me to make a much larger impact than just being a protected
Yeah.
individual that hasn't experienced anything.
Yeah, it's good. It's awesome.
I mentioned how it was a nice reminder to go through our stories. Like for me, I was sitting here trying to go through, and maybe this was a tactic to not have to think about my story, but as we were doing all this, I was like, this is such an important part of my life, and other people have stories too that are so different, and so it just kind of brought back the idea of like, as Christians, we need to ask people's stories, and we need to understand where they're coming from, because we all have that different background, we all have a different testimony, and they all hold different ups and downs and things that have made us who we are, and if we're not willing to dig deeper into that, then we're missing an opportunity to grow with them, but also grow closer to God through their story too. So I think there's not only benefits in doing this with our own stories, but taking a second to say, hey, like, you're a Christian, I've never heard your testimony, like, let's talk about it, let's share, and getting that encouragement from their story also. And I mean, that's just uplifting for both parties, but it was just a friendly reminder that other people have stories too, and no one's story is perfect, so it's okay to be vulnerable and share those stories with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. I mean, even with what you guys both shared right there, I mean, there's a lens of my story is bigger than myself. It's for the sake of others as well. And so I love that perspective through that. So hopefully it is an encouragement to others or spurring or just say like, hey, yeah, I had this go on too, but I realized this. And so there's just greater community that is fostered through our shared experiences or our different experiences that we've had as well. If you guys want to kind of want some different resources and how to tie all this together, there's just a few different ways to do that. One, I would encourage you guys spend some time going through those continued reflection questions and answering some of those, after this or just thinking through that. The gospel fluency, trying to think of his name off the top of my head. Jeff Vanderstilt, that's right. those websites, it has a lot of good resources. They're just different ways to walk through your story that might help you sum it up if you want to tell your testimony or share your experiences. The 3 pillars is literally what it sounds is, what are the 3 pillars of my life, of my experience that I can kind of write and sum up. So Instagram stories, if you're a creative and you want to draw your story, that's a kind of a cool way to draw the pictures of how that represents your experiences in your stories. Just another way to kind of put this all together in summary. And then the turning points one that we passed over is just an easy way to kind of do that as well. Yeah, thanks for playing ball and doing this. Hopefully it was beneficial. Hopefully it was encouraging to you guys. I know that the work that you do to look back on your experiences and how Christ is shaping and forming you is going to be used. Like, it's not going to be wasted time. And with each week that we go through this, hopefully it just continues to give you a greater confidence in who God has made you to be, but gives you a sharper understanding of your past and of those around you as well. So this next week, we're going to be looking at our personalities. And Jeremy is going to come in and talk about the Myers-Briggs briefly. Allie Weingartner, our resident expert there, is going to come in and talk about the Enneagram. And we'll just walk through a few of those and how those can help us gain understanding. So some of you guys might be like, heck yes. Others of you might be like, I don't really care. But I think it'll be a fun time. So that's what we got going next week. But let me pray, and then we'll be done with our time here. Father, thank you that you are the writer of our story, and that our story is, and our experiences are ultimately for you. God, that you are over every single one. God, you have never panicked at any moment in our life. But God, you have continued to be the one who is with us and present, even if we did not recognize you. And so, God, would you help us to just be honest with ourselves and the things that we have gone through and experienced, and ask the hard questions and press deep so that we can ultimately be just shaped by your Spirit into the image of your Son, Jesus. And so may conversations just not happen here in this room and in this time, God, but I pray that you would challenge us to continue to ask each other about our stories and our experiences, so that we can learn and we can grow and we can be changed ultimately for your glory, God. Thank you for this time, and I pray this all in your name. Amen.